Okay, Year 10 and 11, the January exams are here. They're well underway. Year 11, obviously today you had your first exam on the Civil Rights and the Germany module. I hope it went okay. Obviously it won't be too long before you get the results back, but I'm sure you've done really well. Those people who I spoke to today seem to think it went okay. So well done for that, and obviously keep revising. Today this is a video on an element of the World War I module, so it'll be useful for Year 10 as well, because obviously you've got your January exam in a couple of weeks. This is part 1 of 3 videos that I'm doing on the war at sea. I should really say 1 of 4, because actually I've already done a video on Gallipoli, which links to the war at sea because it involves a naval campaign, or part of it is to do with the Navy and the war at sea. So what I'll do is I'll put a link to the Gallipoli video below, so if you want to watch that, the link for that is there, or you can find it on the channel. But as I say, this is part 1 of 3 videos that I'm making this week on the war at sea. So I'll do the first one now, and the other 2 will come later on in the week. In this video, I want to focus on a little bit of why the war at sea is significant in the First World War, and also the early battles or the early skirmishes that take place, obviously early on in the war. Basically, everything that happens before the Battle of Jutland. Now, as you should all know, the Battle of Jutland is the big battle that you really do need to know about in terms of the war at sea in the First World War. But in this video I want to talk about some of the things that happened before that, before the Battle of Jutland, because a few small battles or skirmishes happened before then. In the next video, in video 2, I'll talk about the Battle of Jutland, and then in video 3 I want to focus on the German U-boat campaign, okay, and how they use U-boats, what U-boats were, and how the Germans used them. So I'll get straight on with it. Part 1 of 3, here we go. So why was the war at sea significant in terms of the First World War? Well, it's significant because both Britain and Germany want to control the sea. They want to be able to control the North Sea, or the sea in general, and do damage to the enemy as a result. Now, Germany want to control the sea for quite a few reasons. Number 1 is Britain, as an island, is reliant on the sea for its imports. So obviously we can grow our own food, but a lot of the food that we get, both back in World War I and today, is imported. And obviously in 1914 to 1918, these imports came via the sea. Okay, we didn't have aeroplanes that were flying across the Atlantic, certainly not commercial airlines or airlines that would carry food and supplies, things like that. So they all came via the sea. So we need the sea for our imports, to be able to import and export, to import and export goods. So that's things like food, but it's also things like raw materials, things we need to make stuff, including weaponry. Okay, obviously we're fighting a war at this point, and we need weapons or things to make weapons with, and a lot of that comes from abroad. So Germany understand this, they recognise this, and they think, well, Britain is an island, they need they need imports and exports via the sea. So if we can somehow disrupt that, if we can stop Britain getting things imported or via the sea, then that'll really help us defeat them, because hopefully we can starve them into submission or stop them getting things to, as I say, make weapons or getting weaponry. Linked to that is, again, because we're an island and the war is taking place, or a large chunk of the war, the bit of the war that we're really interested in, or we've got a vested interest in, is the Western Front. And the Western Front, as we know, or the line of trenches on the Western Front, is in France and Belgium. Now, France and Belgium are obviously across the English Channel or across the North Sea. So again, we need the sea to be clear, we need to use the sea to get our troops across to France and Belgium. If we can't, then we're pretty much out of the war. Or we're going to have to find another way of beating Germany if we can, because we can't get our troops to the Western Front. So we need, again, the sea to be able to get the troops across. And back home as well, if we need to bring them home. Eventually we'll need to bring them home. So there's that as well. And also, if you'll remember, Britain has an empire. So countries all around the world, in parts of Africa and Asia, Australia, etc. So we have land all around the world, which again, in order for us to communicate and control those areas of land, those different countries around the world, again, we need to be able to use the sea to get there. Because as I say, even though planes existed at this time, they were very small planes, like 2-man planes. You certainly couldn't fly troops here left, right and centre, and long range flight was quite rare in its infancy at this point. So again, we need the sea. It's simple as that. Britain needs the sea for all those reasons that I've given before, and Germany know this, and Germany want to stop us. They want to control the sea, so we can't import and export, that we can't get our troops to the Western Front or get them back from the Western Front, or control the rest of our empire. So that's why Germany wants to control the sea. Britain want to do pretty much the same thing. Germany, I haven't got a map on me, which is a bit annoying. I should have brought one, but never mind. Germany, if you look at a map, you'll see it does have a coastline. The north part of Germany is on the sea. Now, Germany, again, get a lot of their food and raw materials imported, like Britain do. And really, at this point during the war, there's only one way they can get things imported to them, and that's via the sea into their ports. Because obviously, on the western side of Germany, or just to the west, there's a war going on between Germany and obviously France and Britain on the west side of Germany. And then likewise on the east side of Germany, they're fighting the Russians. So the only way Germany can get anything into the country from elsewhere is via the sea. There's no other way of doing it. Now, Britain recognise this again, and they think, right, well, what we can do is we can blockade or block off the German ports, and again, stop them getting things in and out. So a similar idea, or the same idea as Germany have had in terms of stopping Britain getting things imported and exported. And again, likewise, Germany have got an empire. It's not as big as Britain's, but again, they've got land around the world, which they want to be able to communicate with and control. And likewise, if Britain can control the sea, they'll stop Germany being able to communicate with their empire. So really, both sides have kind of got the same aims, same ambitions, really. So that's why it was significant. Controlling the sea is a really major boost. If you can control the sea, if you're in charge of it, it gives you a real boost in terms of winning the war. As I've stated before, it's really important in terms of supply lines and morale, really. So whoever can win the war at sea will get a huge boost in terms of the bigger picture of the war. So now I'm going to talk about the early clashes at sea before the Battle of Jutland. Remember, in video 2 I will talk about the Battle of Jutland, but for now I just want to talk about the early clashes, the early battles and the early skirmishes in World War I, in the First World War. The first one I want to talk about is the Battle of Heligoland Bight. Now, this is the first naval battle of the First World War, and it takes place early on in the war. It takes place in August 1914. Now, what happens is Britain sail their destroyers, type of navy ship, big navy ship. They sail some of their destroyers very close to the German coastline, and they do this deliberately because they're trying to basically tempt the Germans out to come and fight them. So they sail the destroyers quite close to the German coastline. The Germans see them, and they take the bait basically and send out some of their ships to go and attack the British. Now the British expect this. They, as I say, they've done it on purpose. They've tried to lure the Germans out into a trap, basically, and there the British Grand Fleet is waiting for German ships, or the German ships, and 3 German cruisers, again a type of navy ship, and a German destroyer are sunk. So it's a nice early victory for Britain. August 1914, the war's very much in its infancy, and straight away Britain have basically won the first naval battle of the war. It's a small naval battle, it's nowhere near as big as Jutland. But again, nice early boost for Britain. They've taken out 4 German ships. They've managed to trick the Germans. It's a real morale boost for Britain. The Admiral Beatty, who's in charge of this battle, is celebrated as a hero back at home in Britain. So again, nice early victory for Britain. However, we then get quite soon after this, in December 1914, we have the German raids on the east coast. So in December 1914, as I say, now Germany want to damage the morale of Britain. Now, I think I've said this in lesson before. When we think about war, certainly when you think about the Second World War, we are quite familiar with the Blitz and German planes bombing Britain, and likewise British planes bombing German cities. We looked at Dresden in quite a lot of detail in Year 9. We're kind of used to the idea of civilians being caught up in war, not just soldiers. But this is quite a new thing, quite a new idea in terms of World War One. When the Germans raid the east coast of Britain, they are trying to make the British people feel very vulnerable. Just because you're at home in Britain, don't think that you're safe. You're in danger. And that's exactly what they do. So the Germans send some navy ships to the east coast of England, of Britain. And on the 16th of December, got to grab the right bit of paper. On the 16th of December 1914, the towns of Hartlepool, Whitby, and Scarborough are shelled by these navy ships from the sea. And it causes a huge amount of damage. 500 British casualties. 500 British people are either killed or wounded by these raids. So they're not tiny. Certainly it's felt back in Britain. It's well reported in the newspaper, and it does damage British morale. Suddenly the British people, who have felt quite safe at home, suddenly thinking, oh my God, the German ships are able to attack us here in our homes. We thought we were perfectly safe back here. We thought the danger was on the Western Front. But what did we know? We were very wrong. There's another aim, I should have said this before. Another aim of the Germans isn't just to damage the morale of Britain. That's one of the aims. Another aim is that they think, right, if we attack the British and make them feel vulnerable, then what the British will be forced to do is they'll be forced to spread their fleet, their navy ships, across the coast to defend it. So rather than kind of bunching them all together in one grand fleet, which we do not want to fight because it's massive, we don't want to take on the whole fleet, we want to actually divide them up, basically. So if we can make Britain feel really vulnerable, they'll have to divide up their ships to defend the coast, and then we can pick them off one by one or two at a time, rather than taking on the whole bulk of the British Grand Fleet all at once, because that's what the Germans are really scared of. So that's another aim. And as I said before, there's a real outrage in Britain that this has happened. It really does damage morale, and it's a victory for the Germans. So the first in Heligoland Bight, we've had a bit of a British victory, if I can say that properly. Had a bit of a British victory. Here it's a German victory. Okay. Now we have the Battle of Dogger Bank, which takes place on the 24th of January 1915. So what happens here? Well, the British intercept some German radio signals. The Germans say we are going to go out to Dogger Bank, where the British fishing fleet is, catching fish for food, back in Britain. We're going to go out to Dogger Bank and we're going to attack the fishing fleet. Now, as I said before, the British have intercepted these radio messages, so they know what the Germans are planning and what the Germans are doing. So the British fleet, the navy ships, wait for them. They're coming, so they just wait at Dogger Bank. They wait for the Germans to come and attack them, and as I say, the British are waiting for the Germans, and they take out 2 German ships, before the Germans are able to escape. Okay, that's the early skirmishes and battles of the First World War. So compared to Jutland, they're very, very small, and you don't need to know about them in as much detail, but it's good to know that it's not just the war at sea is not just the Battle of Jutland. These things happen as well. Remember as well the significance of the war at sea. This isn't just something that the British and Germans go, oh, we might as well fight for the control of the sea. It's something they're really keen to get. Whoever takes control of the sea gets a real feather in their bow in terms of the war on a larger scale. Okay, so that's why the war at sea is so significant, and there are some of the early battles. As I say, next video I'm going to talk about the Battle of Jutland on its own, and then in video 3 I'll talk about the German U-boats, the German U-boat campaign. Okay, I'll try and get those uploaded this week. I will leave the comments section open below for Year 11 and Year 10. Again, if you have any requests for any other videos to do with the First World War, just leave those comments below. I'll also put the link for the Gallipoli video in the description below. But I hope this has been of some use to you, and I'll see you all very soon.